Chapter 5. The bell jingled only a moment before Eloise found herself entangled. She stumbled and almost fell. Her hands flew to brace herself as a pair of strong arms wrapped around her. A mess of arms and legs too close together searched for space. She gained her footing, but the man held her close. It lasted only a second too long. Long enough for her to catch a whiff of horse, barn, soap, and coffee. A familiar and comforting combination. The strength of him fully surrounded her as they mumbled apologies. Eloise looked into his face. Not him again. Quickly, she pushed away and hid her face beneath her bonnet. If only she could shrink into it completely and avoid confrontation. Keeping her eyes down, she saw 2 black handprints on the front of his shirt. She'd not paused to wash the soot from her hands or retrieve her gloves after meeting Isaac in her rush back to Helen's. There was no helping it now. Serves him right for bursting out of Anderson's without looking. Again. Perhaps the blame did not fall only on him. Walking briskly with her head down, shielded by her bonnet, she had only been focused on her next step. After all, it's the only way to get anywhere in this town without being forced to stop and smile at every passerby. But to run into this man twice in the same day, the same hour, it's completely his fault that he has soot marks on his shirt, even if they were put there by my hands. Pardon me. She sidestepped to continue on her way. He moved and blocked her path. The nerve of this man. I'm sorry, did you need something? She did not look up at his face. Sucking in a breath, she let it out in a huff. She counted to 10, slowly at first, then rushing to the end. Honestly, how long did he plan to hold her hostage? Chancing a peek at him, she lifted her eyes to meet his. He was grinning, a big, stupid grin, as if he were the only one in on a joke and he wasn't sharing.
Hi, Chipmunk,
he said.
Remember me?
He stepped aside but leaned his head to catch her eyes under the brim of her bonnet and refused to let her look away. Most people ignored her. They were used to her avoidance by now and let her be. Of course I remember you. Did he call me a chipmunk? We met an hour ago in front of the livery. You have a habit of plowing into people. Now, if you'll let me pass... A fresh cut on his forehead puckered red with faint bruising surrounding it. Realization hit her like a rock. Oh, no. He is the stranger from the creek. The one who fell and the one she thought she would never have to see again. The one she dreaded would ever see her again, especially after giving him those false directions into town. If he had only listened... He should have been in Hadley Springs or past it by now. He would be gone forever and she would never have to think of it or him again. Why was he here? How was he here, looking at her with his strong green eyes and his indecent grin? Warmth ran down her neck at the remembrance of their improper meeting. You look clean, she managed to say.
As do you.
That stupid grin of his. There was nothing funny about any of this. This man had all but seen her naked. There wasn't a man alive who had seen that much of her. He stood there smiling, rocking back on his boot heels, waiting for something, but what? She didn't know. He did look clean today, and different somehow. He looked nice. She knew from the heat pulsing in her ears that he was witnessing her face turn red. Yes, well, I need to be going. Good day. And goodbye. She stepped around him. He let her pass this time. Thank goodness for that. She was in no mood for games. Keeping her eyes off the ground, she took measured steps, hyper-aware of being watched. She would not run. She would not appear to be at fault. She was guilty of nothing. Goodness, what would Jessica say now? She would ask again about his looks. Dashing, rugged, dangerous? No. Mischievous and smirky. Good-looking? No. Perhaps. It was hard to say, she was so distracted. She lifted her hand to fan her face, but shot it down again when she realized what she was doing. The heat she felt stemmed from her embarrassment, not his dashing appearance, if one were to go as far to describe him as such. He looked worlds better than yesterday. Yesterday he was a dirty mess, covered in dust from the trail, with sand in his hair from the tumble off the bank. The blood mixing with the dirt on his face had not been an image that brought girlish fancies to her mind. Or heart. No, he was not handsome. Was he? Good grief, she didn't care. Jessica would find out for herself soon enough, and best of luck to her. Regardless, Eloise slowed her walk and glanced behind, then whirled her head back to the front and sucked in her breath. He was following her. Ignore him? Confront him? Step into the next shop and pray for him to pass by? He made the decision for her. The thump of his boots sounded lightly over the few paces he jogged to catch up with her. As much as she wished to avoid this man, there was not to be an easy escape today.
I hear there's a respectable boarding house this way. May I walk with you?
She simply nodded and kept moving down the block, but she picked up her pace. 2 blocks. She could be polite for 2 blocks, and then she could be rid of him. He kept talking.
I'm new in town. Just rode in last night.
So he thinks he's funny. He wanted to make small talk, but she was never good at pleasantries. Often she said too much, or not enough. Suppose I ignore him. He might forget all about me. Of course, that would never work. He was looking for lodging at Jessica's house. Oh, why didn't he keep writing? If only men would listen. He would have been far, so very far away by now. Oof, why did I leave the house today? She blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Did you meet Frank? Sneaking another glance, she saw his grin disappear in a hurry. What a stupid thing for her to say. At the livery? Frank owns the livery. You have a horse, yes? I thought you would have a horse.
I have a horse. Susie girl. She's quite faithful. Honest, you know? She can be a little ornery at times, but I never question her intentions.
He matched his steps to her increasing pace.
You always walk this fast?
Self-conscious now, she slowed and let him set the pace. What were 2 blocks?
A funny thing happened yesterday,
he said.
Susie girl and I were riding along, minding our own business, when we came across...
I'd rather not speak of it, Eloise said.
A baby playing in the creek. He wasn't alone, of course. No, of course not. Everyone knows it's dangerous to let a baby play alone in the water. You never know what might happen. No, ma'am, he wasn't alone. This was wonderful news for me because, you see, I'd been lost on the prairie for 3 days. Though I suppose lost is a relative word. I had water and the sun. Eventually I would have found the ocean, perhaps a town or 2 and a crust of bread in the meantime. But I was desperate for guidance. You can imagine my gratitude when a chipmunk pointed me in the direction of a town, or so I believed. I had no reason to suspect that I was merely being sent on a goose hunt, and to my knowledge, April is a terrible time of year for hunting geese.
Eloise stopped abruptly. Boldly, for her, she stared at him, prepared to give him a strong piece of her mind, though his grin was gone. It had been replaced with a hardness she hadn't expected to see from his light tone. She said nothing as she locked eyes with him, but her heart sped up and she could feel it clawing at her chest. Her rebuttal died on her tongue. She envied his strength. Reason warned her to be cautious, but oddly she felt no fear. Harm would have come to her yesterday if he was of ill intent. She shouldn't have lied to him. She knew that, but was he so very angry? Does he think I lied spitefully? Of course he would be angry. Words of apology caught in her throat. Lowering her gaze, she found herself looking at the buttons on his shirt. One stood out particularly. A different color of thread had been used to attach it. A repair. Such a small hint at who he was. Yet it made her feel less awkward. It reminded her that he was just a man trying to make his way in the world, too. A man who had buttons fall off his shirt like any other person.
Miss, is something wrong?
He reached out as if to grasp her elbow, but stopped. His hand remained suspended in the air. "I'm sorry," she said. Getting the words out first and quickly was always the most efficient way to move on from these situations. Waiting for Philip to apologize had been like waiting for the snow to melt in January.
"What for?"
He shifted from one foot to the other, and she noticed his grin was back.
"For my pleasant bed of straw? For my lack of fried chicken dinner? Or for supplying me with 10 horse stalls to muck out with no pay this morning? For which of those would you like to take responsibility?"
She shook her head. "Fried chicken?" Stilling her nerves, she answered, "I'm sorry for giving you misleading directions, for lying, but I meant no real harm. If you had kept going the way I suggested, there would have been a town, just not this one." Sucking in her lower lip, she replayed her apology in her mind, wringing her hands. After all, he had been the one to ogle her in the creek. What more could he expect? He rubbed his chin.
"I told Susie it wasn't a bridge,"
he mumbled. Maybe it was the fresh shaving nick on his chin, maybe it was the bruise on his forehead from a fall she had inadvertently caused, or maybe it was the way his expression transformed from disgruntlement to compassion, but she found herself wanting to reach out and straighten his crooked shirt collar. Stop staring at his shirt. She offered a smile. "Hadley Springs is a lovely town, another 7 miles west." He laughed.
"Fair enough."
His coffee-brown hair fell into his eyes. He lifted the corner of his Stetson and combed it back under his hat, offering a half-smile.
"After all, you can't be too careful these days. I could have been anyone, standing up there on the bank while you were down there less than—"
Her hand flashed to cover his mouth on its own accord. "Don't speak of it." Blocking her hand, he laughed and skipped out of her reach. His grin was back in full force, causing her cheeks to turn a beet red.
"And what if I do?"
he asked, teasing.
"There's no harm in having a freckle above your ankle."
"Why?" Eloise was stunned. She spied a pair of men across the road. Otherwise, the area was clear of people. Still, she lowered her voice. "Hold your tongue. If you ever speak of this to anyone, honestly, I'll... She shook her head frantically.
"Whoa, hold it."
He leaned toward her and put his finger to his lips.
"If you ever, and I mean ever, tell anyone that I slipped and fell off a creek bank and landed on my head, I will deny it to my dying breath. Are we clear?"
Now it was her turn to laugh.
"Shall we?"
He motioned down the boardwalk. "I'm on my way to Helen's. I can show you the way." She was overly conscious of him beside her. He'd seen enough of her to notice the freckle on her ankle, and what a silly thing for her to say. Show you the way. Like the man couldn't walk 2 blocks on his own. She could have pointed. That way. She reasoned he could use directional help. After all, what kind of a man loses track of a railroad? With homesteads every half-mile scattered through the county, she was always surprised to hear of wayward travelers. Nevertheless, walking beside him through town was unnecessary. He, on the other hand, appeared to be perfectly at ease. He swung his arms comfortably and kept his pace measured to hers. The click of her heels sounded too loud next to the deeper thump of his boots. She raised her eyes up the street and took in as much of the sky as she could see over the town. It was beautiful, as always. She had that at least. There wasn't a cloud in sight, just solid bright blue in every direction, so open and free.
"Big sky you have here,"
he said. "It's just the sky. It's always big."
"Not like this."
He waved a hand up and around. Her gaze followed.
"Have you always lived here?"
"Yes, I was born here. Barely. We were one of the first families." His green eyes were so vivid. His patient smile compelled her to keep talking. "When I was a child, my family used to visit the Platte River during the summer, and I've traveled by train to the state fair 3 times, once each in Omaha, Nebraska City, and Lincoln."
"The sky is smaller where I'm from,"
he said. She let out a small laugh. Despite their undesirable meetings, she began to relax. A little. "I don't know how that could be true. It can't be any bigger or smaller anywhere on this earth." They had reached Helen's and stopped in front of the porch.
Someday when you've traveled outside of Nebraska, we can have this conversation. Until then, you'll just have to trust me.
Explain yourself. She surprised herself by her own audacity to keep the conversation going. If the sky is big here, how can it possibly be smaller where you're from?
There are too many trees in West Virginia. The sky has to fight for everything it's got. We have so many trees that you have to find a lake to know if the sun's coming up or going down. I used to climb on top of the house and push the branches out of the way just to check if it was going to rain.
She squinted at him. I don't believe you.
It's true. Okay, mostly true. The sky has more room to play here. It sure likes to show off when it can. Just trust me. West Virginia has a few things going for it, but the sky is smaller.
He shrugged, so matter of fact, and then he winked.
I'd like to hear more about your state fair.
Her heart leaped in her chest, not in a pleasant way. It was the slam of the deadbolt locking back into place, reminding her of who she was. That it was Philip's birthday, that he was gone and was never coming back. Not that she deserved any better. If she had been a better wife and less selfish, he would still be here. He held out his hand to her.
Ezekiel James. My friends call me Zeke.
His warm hand held hers firmly, and his steady eyes never left hers. A genuinely friendly smile graced his face. But he didn't know. He couldn't. If he had known about her, he wouldn't be wasting his time on her. Everybody knew who she was. She could only imagine what they said about her when she wasn't around, which was most of the time. It was her fault her husband was dead and would forever be her fault. There was no going back or changing anything. Ezekiel James. My friends call me Zeke. He raised his eyebrows.
And you are?
Oh, she startled. Eloise Davidson. The wind gusted at that moment and blew her skirts around and tousled her bonnet. She pulled her hand away from his and tucked her hair back into place as best she could, and was reminded of her soiled hands. She wiped them together, attempting to remove any extra soot. It was useless. She stole a glance at his chest that bore the marks of 2 distinct handprints.
Zeke wanted to keep her talking and find out everything. What made a girl like her laugh, and what made her stop in her tracks and apologize for having done nothing but try to protect herself? Despite her reservations, she had spunk, though her whole countenance suddenly changed. She'd gone from aloof to a weary sadness. He could not figure her out, but he wanted to. The gold of a wedding band glinted in the sunshine. Zeke studied the simple gold band while she held her wayward hair in place against the wind. Married. Disappointment stabbed his gut. It was odd that he would feel that way, or feel anything for that matter. The fact came as a surprise that he cared one way or another about her marital status. What did it matter if Chipmunk, Mrs. Eloise Davidson, was married? Good for her. He had spent 5 minutes with her, and another 5 yesterday, but they weren't talking about that. He grinned at her. Oklebo was just a stop on the road, just a dot on a map, not even a noteworthy landmark, a means for him to find work and cash and food for the next section of his journey, nothing more. Certainly not a place to get attached to someone, especially one who didn't even like him, especially one who was married. All this silly talk about the sky was ridiculous. Still, she was sharp-witted and clever. He sure hadn't minded passing the time with her. Zeke observed the house where they'd stopped, a 2-story white wooden house. A large sign hung from the porch. Palmer Boarding House. Respectable guests only. No drunkards. He motioned to the sign. Think I'll pass the entrance exam? I'm generally a respectable person. Most often. He was stalling. Susie Girl is available as a character reference, but unless Mrs. Palmer speaks hoarse... He didn't want to go in. Zeke, you're an idiot. Making friends with a married woman is a fool's errand. And yet he lingered. She was cautious and closed up, and he wanted her to smile and laugh a little more. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay, though he knew absolutely nothing about the everything. Maybe he had misjudged her. She was just wary of strangers, that was all. But no, there was something else about her that puzzled him. Something secret, just below the surface. Not likely anything she would share with a complete stranger. His conscience stabbed him for lingering. He'd wanted to keep her talking, but she wasn't taking the bait. He knew horse jokes were a stretch, but he gave himself credit for trying. Following her gaze to his shirt, he saw 2 black handprints smudged on his chest. "Whoa!" he laughed. Looking at his own hands, he found soot on his right palm. She lifted her eyes up to meet his and wrinkled her nose. Shrugging an apology, she turned up the palms of her hands to show him. "You did this?" He grabbed one of her hands and placed it on his chest. "Look at that! Perfect fit!" She slipped her hand away.
"I've been at the smithy. Forgot to wash before I left. A terrible habit."
Secrets indeed. "You work at a smithy?" She smiled, though it was only in her mouth. The sadness did not leave her eyes.
"My father-in-law owns it. I stop in when I can to help out now that he works alone, sweeping and such."
The thumb of her right hand massaged circles into the other, as if that would clear away the soot. She sniffed and blinked back tears. Oh no! What had he done now? His mother used to cry over the oddest things, especially after his father died. A poem about a butterfly once choked her up. Tears didn't bother him much. Girls would be girls. There were no butterflies presently, so this must be something else. Not knowing what else to do, he found his navy-colored handkerchief and offered it. "A little dirt never hurt anything. Here, let me." He gently took her hands in his and wiped them. Not much soot came off. Zeke thought of Rachel and the particularly slow way she used to dismount from the wagon. He missed her. There was no hurrying Rachel, and she insisted that he stand patiently with his hand supporting hers until she was fully on solid ground. She would straighten her skirts and hat and double-check that she had everything she needed, and only then would she squeeze his hand and say,
"Thank you, dear,"
as if he had done her a grand favor. Funny that holding her hand used to be such a chore, and yet how he missed it. The gold band on Mrs. Davidson's finger could not be ignored. "Your husband doesn't work at the smithy?" Her hand stiffened, and she looked up at him. Her whole body went rigid as an array of emotions played across her face. His question had struck a chord. She pulled her hands away, but he held tight to one and wrapped her fingers around the handkerchief, offering it to her.
"No."
Holding in her breath, she pulled at the kerchief, wrapping it around and around her hand in one direction, and then twisting it back in the other. The screen door slammed.
"Ellie, hi, who's your friend?"
A young woman came skipping down the steps with a packet of letters in her hand. Chipmunk startled and stepped away from him as if she'd been caught sneaking cookies before dinner. At least, that's something he would get caught with.
"I saw you from the parlor, thought you were on your way in. Gave up waiting on you."
A blush covered Chipmunk's cheeks. He watched the flush travel even to her ears and down her neck. Was she thinking of their first meeting? When she looked at him, he barely shook his head, then winked at her. Her eyes widened, and he struggled to keep a straight face.
"Jess, this is..."
She swallowed.
"Mr. Ezekiel James. He's new, in town. I was showing him where to find a decent room to rent. Mr. James, meet Jessica Palmer. But I wasn't sure if you had a vacancy. Weren't you just telling me earlier that you had filled all the rooms this week?"
Miss Palmer approached Chipmunk with a smile and wiggled her eyebrows.
"Oh, no, we've room. Any friend of Eloise is a friend of ours."
Zeke offered his hand. "Please, call me Zeke. My friends do. Mrs. Davidson and I were just discussing the state fair."
"What fun!"
Miss Palmer said.
"Our fathers always went together and let us tag along for the adventure. They were always interested in new equipment. We were only girls the last time we went. What were we, 10? 9? No matter, it wasn't much fun, all told. A crowd of men all excited over a threshing machine isn't my cup of tea, but I suppose there is always something pleasant to do if you look for it, and the excitement of traveling by train, I dare say it's improved since then. Did you come by train, Mr. James?"
"I did not." Zeke looked at Chipmunk and cleared his throat. "I have a horse. She's with Frank. I may leave by train, but I have business in town first."
"What sort of business? Pardon me, but you don't look like a regular business type man,"
Miss Palmer said. Her mouth ran faster than the train, that was for sure. Zeke smiled pleasantly. "You're very right, Miss Palmer. My business includes taking care of a few basic necessities, namely a new shoe for the horse and restocking for my trip west."
"Excuse me,"
Eloise said.
"I must see about Luke."
Without a backward glance, she hurried up the steps and into the house. He found himself staring after her. A cough from Miss Palmer brought his attention back to her.
"What happened here?"
She twirled a finger at him, pointing to the handprints on his shirt. He looked down and grunted. He would have to do something about that.